The meeting to order, and so as everyone knows, we repeat it daily. The committee is continuing its study on the pre-budget consultations 2020. So I want to, in beginning, thank all the witnesses who have managed to get here on fairly short notice. And also inform you for those groups that made submissions prior to the August deadline. The committee passed a motion to bring forward those submissions and consider them as part of our pre-budget consultations 2020, so they will be basically put into evidence. So with that, we will start first, and if I could ask you to try and hold your comments roughly to 5 minutes. And that'll give us plenty of time for questioning around the table. We'll start with the Appraisal Institute of Canada, Mr. Fox, President, and Mr. Lancaster, CEO. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, honourable members, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, we're very honoured to again be here and appreciate the opportunity to present our members' perspectives and recommendations to the Standing Committee on Finance as you prepare for your pre-budget consultation process. The Appraisal Institute of Canada has over 5,500 members that complete over 1 million real property appraisals each year, valuing over $1 trillion worth of real estate and real property. Our members provide unbiased opinions of value on residential, commercial, and all other types of property. In addition to a university degree, our members complete a rigorous program of professional study, leading to one of 2 internationally recognized designations. The scope and conduct of our member services are defined by our Canadian Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. As a self-regulatory body, we have a strong focus on consumer protection. We maintain a robust disciplinary process and provide a mandatory professional liability insurance program to help protect consumers and our members' clients. Our submission today is focused on 3 areas. First, that the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions exempt residential mortgage renewals from the application of the B20 stress test. Second, that the Government of Canada work with provinces and territories to create a publicly accessible registry of beneficial ownership to help combat money laundering in real estate. And third, that the Government of Canada make an immediate investment to improve the quality, availability, and currency of flood mapping across the country. We understand that each of these recommendations has been noted in mandate letters to the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, and the Minister of Natural Resources. We would like to convey the importance of proceeding with these initiatives and would note that we are fully prepared to support government in carrying out that work. On to our first recommendation. As we all know, as of January 1st, 2018, the stress test has been applied to uninsured residential mortgage loans gained through federally regulated lending institutions. The stress test applies to all mortgage loans, whether they're new originations, renewals, or refinances. While we know and appreciate that many in organized real estate have called for broad-based changes in the stress test, our focus has been on the application of the stress test to renewals. Applying the stress test on borrowers who may want to switch lenders at renewal could prevent consumers from obtaining the most competitive interest rate and terms that might otherwise be available in the marketplace. Whether it is at the end of the mortgage's first term or several terms down the road, mortgage holders seeking to renew their mortgages are responsible borrowers who have a proven track record and are not seeking to increase the amount of their mortgage debt. We would also note that transferring one mortgage from one federally regulated financial institution to another does not add any additional financial stress to the system as a whole. Therefore, we recommend that mortgage renewals be exempt from the application of the stress test so that Canadians can obtain the most competitive rates and terms possible. Our second recommendation focuses on allegations of criminal behaviour and money laundering through real estate purchases in Canada. One measure that has been discussed, and in fact has been recently announced in British Columbia, is the need for and the creation of a publicly accessible registry of beneficial ownership. In May of 2019, the C.D. Howe Institute released a report regarding Canada's ability to combat money laundering. The report called for this publicly accessible registry and stated that, quote, Canada's anti-money laundering protections, particularly as they pertain to real estate, are amongst the weakest of those in Western liberal democracies, end quote. Based on 2018, it's estimated the amount of money that is laundered annually in Canada could be as high as $130 billion. The CD Howe report further outlines that money launderers are able to do what they do because of their ability to be, quote, invisible and anonymous, end quote. A publicly accessible registry of beneficial ownership would help address that concern. We believe these registries would help support the balance in market forces of supply and demand and help ensure that legitimate homeowners are allowed to compete in a fair and more balanced market. Regardless of how the registry is structured, it is important that all stakeholders within the real estate industry have full and equitable access to these and other public records. Our third and final recommendation relates to the increased number of floods that have occurred over the last several years in communities across the country, most notably in the spring due to abnormally high water levels during the thaw. Many thousands of residences and buildings across the country have struggled in preparing for and managing these extreme flooding events. With reports and indications that climate change is one of the factors that is contributing to recurring flooding. In fact, the Insurance Bureau of Canada estimates that over 1 million homes across Canada are at very high risk of flooding, and a portion of those are at very high risk. Homes and buildings that are situated in floodplains are often less valuable than those that are outside of those zones, and as climate change escalates, floods will occur more frequently and in areas that may not have been affected in the past. Prospective homeowners, developers, and the mortgage lending industry rely in part on information gathered by appraisers to make their buying, lending, and development decisions. Update flood maps that would be made available to the real estate industry and, in fact, to the public would assist appraisers in providing more accurate information to those that are relying on those reports. Mr. Chairman, honorable members, we feel privileged to have been invited here today to share the perspectives of our members. We also appreciate the chance to share our recommendations and would be very pleased to respond to any questions or comments you and your colleagues may have. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lancaster, and I think you would know that the Finance Committee did a fairly major study on money laundering, etc. last Parliament, and that recommendation matches with what we recommended as well, so thank you for that. With the Canadian Mental Health Association, Ms. Rodriguez, Senior Policy Analyst. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable members. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I am Sarah Rodriguez, Senior Policy Analyst at the National Office of the Canadian Mental Health Association. Founded in 1918, the Canadian Mental Health Association is a pioneer and leader in community-based programming and service delivery. With 86 locations, our programs and services are available in more than 330 communities. The National Office of the Canadian Mental Health Association champions publicly funded mental health care, advocates to end stigma, and enhances the knowledge and evidence base around how social and economic status influence mental health. The Canadian Mental Health Association applauds the federal government for firmly establishing mental health as a priority in the Health Minister's mandate letter and in its throne speech on December 5th. The stated commitments to increase people's access to mental health and addictions care and to ensure that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples have access to culturally safe mental health care are critical, as the opioid and suicide epidemics continue to have a devastating impact on individuals, families, and communities. The stated commitment to mental health sends a clear message to people in Canada who increasingly see mental health as important and who are working together to break down stigma around mental illness. People from all walks of life are demonstrating an unprecedented level of honesty and engagement, and with it, a desire for change. The time has come to match political will to public awareness and make the immediate, tangible investments that will transform our systems, protect the mental health of all people in Canada, and ensure that people with mental health problems and illnesses can get the help they need when they need it. Our efforts must be effective in the short term and sustainable in the long term. To move forward with purpose, we must work collaboratively to treat and fund mental health and addictions the same way as we do physical health. We can advance equity by elevating parity. Parity is the notion that mental health should be funded equitably and proportionately with physical health care. For at least 5 years, the Canadian Mental Health Association and our allies have advocated for parity of esteem legislation in Canada, which is critical to ensuring accountability and compliance. But people in Canada need their leaders to deliver on the promise of parity and make an elusive notion a reality by bringing urgently needed and highly demanded relief. Canada's universal healthcare system does not universally cover mental health care provided by addictions counselors, psychologists, social workers, and specialized peer support workers, but these services are the foundation of mental health responses in other G7 countries. We know the numbers. This year, 1 in 5 people in Canada will experience a mental health problem or illness. This week, 500,000 people will miss work due to a mental health problem. Today, 11 people will die by suicide. Yet, spending for mental health care represents just 7.2% of Canada's total healthcare spending, even though mental health problems and illnesses represent as much as 23% of the total disease burden. This leaves people in Canada to spend, for example, $950 million per year on counseling services alone, 30% of which is out of pocket. Funding must increase significantly, and it must be tracked by measures that ensure it is truly allocated to mental health. Canada is well positioned to demonstrate true vision and leadership by addressing chronic inequity and underfunding in mental health. Sufficient and sustainable investment in community mental health services, like the Canadian Mental Health Association, is vital to maximizing our healthcare system. We intervene early, preventing problems before they start. We provide direct services to people with mental health problems and illnesses, and we provide supports and programs to people who are leaving hospital care or the justice system to support them in recovery and flourishing. But many people still do not receive the full scope of care that they need, and many others who could be well supported by community mental health care often cycle in and out of hospitals. The Canadian Mental Health Association sprung up from the grassroots and continues to exist because it fills critical gaps in our formal systems. Each year, our 5,000 staff and 11,000 volunteers provide direct services and programs. These are offered in person and through e-mental health solutions. Peer supporters, mental health and addictions counselors, therapists, nurse practitioners, mental health court workers, program coordinators and managers, and recovery coaches support this work from Yukon to Prince Edward Island. We deliver culturally safe programs for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We offer population-specific programs for LGBTQ+ youth, older adults, caregivers, and new parents. We teach children and youth about resilience and social and emotional learning. And we provide interventions like counseling and cognitive behavioral therapy. This is a snapshot of what we do to keep people in and connected to their communities. But we can't keep doing it alone. The Canadian Mental Health Association, does not have core funding and urgently needs an immediate influx of $50 million to more seamlessly coordinate and replicate evidence-based services and programs. Such funding can bring more programs to schools, communities, and workplaces across Canada. People in Canada see a future with continued investment and greater access to effective mental health services and programs. With core funding from the federal government, the Canadian Mental Health Association can pave the way, as it has for the past 100 years. Thank you for inviting me today, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Sarah. With the Canadian Cardiovascular Association, Mr. Cran. I'm not sure if I have your name pronounced right, Andrew. But...
No problem. Bon matin, je m'excuse, mon français n'est pas très bon. Je m'appelle Andrew.
I'm sorry, my French is not very good.
That means I spend my day seeing patients who need pacemakers, have heart rhythm problems, or families where there's sudden death going on. My friends tease me and say I'm an electrician up at the hospital. Access, equity, and quality of care are common goals for all of you health leaders, as well as us leaders in the area of healthcare delivery. I'm here representing 2,500 cardiovascular specialists from across Canada. I live this in spades in the area of access. I go up north to Whitehorse for 2 weeks out of the year to do clinics in Prince Rupert as well. And in those situations, you see the people who have access, the local quality of care. I see a large Indigenous population and see those people struggling to get the best health care that we can do. We know the outcomes in these situations are not very good. What we don't have is a map and the tools by which to try to create improvement. We need to understand what the gaps are and try to deliver on them. We as specialists are the team leads to deliver a $30 billion business. It's a staggering amount of money. And we know that people also get low value care. That low value care is represented in unnecessary testing, ventures that are not necessarily advantageous, inappropriate hospital admissions, and so on. But we lack the tools to be able to compare and use that data to try to improve the system. Imagine investing in that business that doesn't measure, report, compare, or have system improvement. You would never invest in something like that, and yet that is the state that we are in and that we are aspiring to try to improve and change. Sadly, the data's there. So Canadian Institute of Health Information, or CIHI, has much of that data, but in fact, in many of its forms, it's siloed, it's not integrated or analyzed or then turned into improvement tools. And there's no mandate or resources to roll cardiac care data up into a national comparative report like we do in cancer care with CPAC, the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer. Provinces and territories have little tools by which they can do comparative analysis to understand how other places are improving their systems, how they're gaining efficiencies, and how they're delivering better care. If you were a heart institute in New Brunswick or in Manitoba, you're the only game in town. So as a result, understanding whether your length of stay or mortality rates or costs are in line or aspire to be the best in Canada is impossible right now. So we are looking to try to address that problem. As you know, the population is getting older. The scope of our population is getting bigger. 2 of the top 5 reasons to come to the emergency room are heart failure and atrial fibrillation. Heart failure is going to cost you $750 million this year. That's an immense amount. Quality processes suggest we could probably avoid 60% of those admissions. Imagine the cost of hospitalization for a heart problem. Doesn't resolve itself typically in a day or 2. It's expensive and intensive, and there's a huge cost avoidance opportunity. Believe it or not, we can now actually replace your heart valve and have you go home the next day without doing surgery. So a catheter procedure to give you a new heart valve is possible. This is a new venture. It targets typically seniors who have a poor quality of life and a poor outcome, restores quality of life and extends their life. But this is an expensive venture. It's innovation. So our ability to do this is wonderful for the people who want this, who want to avoid open heart surgery. But the cost of this is a recognized need that's advocated for by seniors on the access front. What we need to do is utilize the data, collect and utilize the data to try to develop system improvements to realize this. 20 years ago, the federal government came to CCS in conjunction with PHAC and said we need to develop those measures and methodologies for doing cardiac care reporting. We rose to the challenge and developed the tools in partnership with CIHI in 2012. We received funding through PHAC to work on a project that was funded for 3 years. We then developed those measurement tools, those reporting tools, proven methods, an annual report. The funding no longer existed as of 2015, and since then we have gone into our healthy reserves and virtually bankrupt ourselves to be able to show our commitment to this project as a member organization. This includes thousands of hours of volunteer both expertise and time, and we do have a nucleus of activities in 6 areas where we continue to generate a national map and report. What we are lacking in 2020 is funding to expand and sustain this. This is just 6 out of many areas within cardiac that require some measurement, comparative analysis, and then system improvement. Our ask is for $2.5 million for each year for the next 3 years to sustain and fully roll out that reporting system and work with CIHI to integrate this. In summary, we're asking for support to improve care, eliminate expensive, unhelpful components of care, and enable a learning cardiac healthcare system. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Turning then to, what's the English word for this, guys? Équateur. Mr. Vio, Director of Government Relations.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I hope nothing will happen, but if ever I have a problem during my testimony, I think I'm in good hands here with the cardiologist sitting next to me. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the Finance Committee, thank you for welcoming me here today. My name is Marc-André Viaud, Director of Government Relations for Équateur, organization with thousands of members and sympathizers, which has been proposing concrete solutions in Quebec and the rest of Canada to accelerate the green transition. We feel that budgets for the coming year must reflect the current climate crisis. We know that transformations are profound and complex, and we have to have winning conditions. So the government will have to invest in measures to increase acceptability of this transition and have greater fora for discussion so that there's a genuine conversation between the citizens of various regions of the country. Canadians must appropriate this transition in order for it to be achieved. Today, I'd like to talk about transportation, agriculture, energy, and employment. These are all closely linked to the Canadian measures for climate change and the letters of mandate of ministers. In order to achieve our greenhouse gas emission reductions, we have to accelerate electric vehicles, both public transit, and reduce the use of private cars in order to multiply the benefits. Sarah Petrovan mentioned this in her recommendations a few days ago, and we support these. A fund dedicated to electrifying public transit is necessary to continue the conversion of equipment. With regard to private vehicles, the popularity of the incentive program proves that Canadians are prepared to go toward zero-emission vehicles. Of the $300 million available for the program announced in 2019, $134 million have been spent. This will be used up within a few months, and therefore we recommend the recommendations of Clean Energy Canada. But the obstacles to these vehicles remains the lack of availability of electrical vehicles and charging stations. In order to accelerate the sale of these vehicles, Équiterre thinks that the extension of the incentive program for the next 3 years is the most effective way of achieving sales targets. Secondly, farmers are the first to experience the market impact of climate change. Loss of harvests because of the increasing risks of climate change have an impact on the GDP, the sustainability of farms, the viability of rural communities, and government insurance programs. Strategies to counter this are very important to reduce GHGs from farming practices and increase the resilience of farms. Public policy should favor natural solutions. Since soil degradation costs $3.1 billion in loss of yield in the past few years, the government must present a plan to correct this problem. Équiterre is urging the federal government to support farmers that want to increase their resilience in the long and medium term by changing practices. We believe that risk management programs have to be adapted to give incentive to farmers to adopt practices that regenerate soils. This is an envelope of $2 billion. Thirdly, the cohesion of budgetary choices are essential during this transition period toward green energy. Canada continues to subsidize the production and consumption of fossil fuels. $600 million for the next year. And Canada said that it would have a joint examination by peers to look into the ineffective use of fossil fuels, but the results are still being awaited. We think that the government should continue to look into this until the end of 2020 to have a progressive abandonment of fossil fuels by 2022. Équiterre is very worried about the impact of the transition on Canadian workers. We are fighting climate change, not workers. That's something that's often forgotten in a polarizing discourse and used for political partisan purposes. It is the duty of various levels of government to protect existing jobs in various economic sectors, but as we are going through a decade of transition, should we continue to have jobs in fields that mean higher risk for investors? workers are affected not only by climate change, but the uncertainty about the price of the barrel of oil and the jobs in that sector. In such an environment, we have two choices: diversifying the economy and adaptation to face the social and human cost of the changes of the energy transition. And now we are at the point where a bill is needed. So in conclusion, I'd like to come back to some of the things you said after the presentation by some of my colleagues from CANRAC yesterday. You mentioned that environmentalists and people who work in the energy sector have to sit down and talk to one another. I think that my presentation means just that. I think it's already the case. For example, our organization is part of an alliance that brings together people from the energy sector, from the industry, and environmentalists. It's called SWITCH, to have a smooth transition to a green economy. That dialogue is already underway, and I think that we have to continue to build bridges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marc-Andre. Then turning to the healthcare CAN, Mr. Cloutier, President and CEO, and Ms. Severstrup, the CEO and Chief Scientific Officer.
Monsieur le Président, chers membres.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for welcoming me today on behalf of Healthcare CAN. I'm very pleased to be next to Dr. Hestrup of Bruyere Continuum Care, a great researcher and a member of Healthcare CAN. Before I begin my conversation with you, I'd like to salute my colleagues who are witnesses here, who are expressing their views.
Research hospitals and health organizations must be made a key partner in its sustainable development, green infrastructure, and climate change agendas. As everyone knows, hospitals operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The result is that these critical institutions are the most energy-intensive public facilities in Canada. Hospitals currently consume roughly 11% of Canada's total public energy and collectively account for more than 5% of our nation's greenhouse gas footprint. Making matters worse is the fact that Canada's hospital infrastructure is ancient. Much of these are 50 years older, old hospitals. Yet Canada's research hospital and health organization continue to be excluded, and I say excluded, from most federal infrastructure funding programs, including the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund and many others. In my view, this is an appalling policy oversight. Hospitals and health organizations cannot make green upgrades, retrofits, or repairs when they often do not have the budget to perform even basic maintenance. In 2016, Mr. Chair, we were pleased to see that this committee had recommended the federal government ensure a level playing field for allowing hospitals and health organizations to be eligible to compete directly for federal funding programs like green infrastructure and innovation. Honorable members, we're not asking for any special favors or special treatments. We're asking for is to have our sector to be treated equally like other sectors such as energy and universities. We ask that you bring back that overlooked recommendation in the Budget 2020. In my view, this only requires a policy change and no additional funding. Second point, Healthcare CAN is also urging that the federal government set up a full fund to fund the full cost of health research in Canada. Les activités de recherche comportent des coûts indirects
Research activities involve significant direct costs. The federal funding currently covers only 18 to 21% of indirect costs of research, compared to 40 to 80% covered by our counterparts in the United States and the UK.
Canadian researchers are at a serious disadvantage, and why brain drain, the top-tier research talent, is a serious concern. Healthcare Canada therefore recommends that the federal government grow investment in science to cover the full cost of research, enabling Canada's research hospitals to generate new breakthroughs, including on the health impacts of climate change. Third, and the last, is a specific action to support health lies in the federal government stepping up its efforts to support full deployment of digital solutions in health. Au Canada, les données sur la santé sont également.
In Canada, this information is compartmentalized in one institution or jurisdictional authority. But as the government's own councillors said at the economic strategy table in Canada on science, biological sciences and health, the mobilization of this data on health would be to the benefit of patients, clinicians, researchers, and the economy in general. More specifically, the strategy table recommended that Canada put forward 3 essential components. First of all, an interoperable digital health platform. Secondly, harmonized frameworks for data and privacy protection of the individual. And finally, an electronic health record that for each Canadian. The federal government has all of the power to carry out this recommendation, and we want the federal government to show leadership in order to do so.
President, with the words of the CEO of one of our member institutions in Ontario, who recently published a stirring call to action from the front lines of our healthcare system in the Globe and Mail. And I quote, "While much divides our country, one thing unites us: compassion, safe, and quality care for all Canadians. Without definitive action, it's never been at greater risks. I urge the honourable members of the Finance Committee to take action now." Thank you, and thank you for giving us the privilege to present ourselves here today. Et je vous ai laissé un carton d'invitation.
And I left you an invitation for the 24th of February where you could meet most of these directors who are the heads of institutions at research universities. Thank you.
Then the last witness with the Mr. Obid, president with the Inuit Tapaya Kanatami organization. McLeod will be after me for pronouncing that wrong, but go ahead.
Nakomik, good morning. Ulakut, everyone. Inuit Tapaya Kanatami is the national representational organization for approximately 65,000 Inuit in Canada, the majority of whom live in Inuit Nunangat. And Inuit Nunangat is our homeland and the term that we use to describe the roughly 35% of this country that is governed and controlled by Inuit interests, either through fee simple or through co-management structures through modern treaties or land claims. ITK is governed by the elected leaders of the Inuvialuit Regional Corporation, Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, Makivik Corporation, and the Nunatsiavut government. These 4 Inuit representative organizations and governments are Inuit rights holders under Section 35 of the Constitution, having negotiated comprehensive Inuit Crown land claim agreements between 1975 and 2005. Our ongoing relationship with the federal government, and especially through budgetary processes, is relatively new and an emerging way in which we implement our modern treaties, but also the way in which we implement reconciliation. ITK undertook an exercise to quantify Inuit-specific federal government investments proposed in budgets 2010 to 2019. Through this review, we found the following. that prior to Federal Budget 2016, there were no federal Inuit-specific fiscal investments as part of budgets. Any investments for Inuit tended to be indirect through either public governments or through Indigenous allocations without any specific mention of Inuit specificity within the text of any budget. In fact, mention of Inuit at all in federal budgets was exceedingly rare. For example, in budgets 2010 to 2014, Inuit were only mentioned twice in each budget and not in relation to any new investment. Over the last 4 successive federal budgets, however, references to Inuit have continued to increase, with Budget 2019 containing more than 90 references to Inuit. At the same time, Inuit-specific investment allocations have also increased across a broad range of areas, from health and social development to post-secondary education to early learning and childcare. And in the last 2 years, there have been an Inuit priorities section within the broader Indigenous chapter of the federal budget. These are positive policy changes. They reflect the evolving and maturing relationship between Inuit and the Crown and better situate the meaningful place of Inuit within broader Canadian society and as one of the 3 Indigenous peoples identified in Section 35 of the Constitution. Federal budgets allow for the Canadian government to specifically tell Canadians how it will spend money. And unfortunately, in the past, the term Indigenous or the term Aboriginal, which preceded it, allowed for complete lack of consideration of Inuit within any of the funds that were allocated. Budget 2020 should build on progress made in the last 4 federal budgets by continuing to implement an Inuit Nunangat fiscal policy in the allocation of Inuit-specific funding. The inclusion of an Inuit priority section in the last 2 budgets was a welcome and positive development and should continue in Budget 2020. Continued implementation of an Inuit Nunangat fiscal policy in federal budgets creates efficiency, cost savings, and more immediate impacts and benefits for Inuit that in turn benefit all Canadians. In our pre-budget submission, we have gone through a number of things that we would like to see within the Inuit section of the Indigenous chapter of the budget. It starts with a $1 billion investment in an Inuit Nunangat infrastructure fund to consider eliminating the infrastructure deficit in Inuit Nunangat. It also calls for social infrastructure investments to enhance the health and safety of Inuit Nunangat communities, supporting women and also supporting the emerging workforce, and to create environmental conditions necessary for lifelong development in children. We need investments in early learning and childcare centers, family violence shelters and transitional housing, addictions treatment centers, and in social housing. We also need investments in relation to marine and air infrastructure. Inuit Nunangat encompasses all of Canada's Arctic coastline and significant offshore areas, yet its marine infrastructure is almost non-existent. This contributes to lost economic opportunities, greater fossil fuel emissions, as well as a higher cost of living and its associated challenges. In addition, most airport runways date from the 1950s and 1960s and are made up of compacted gravel and can only support smaller aircraft and lack ability to operate in inclement weather or darkness. We also need investments in renewable energy. No community in Inuit Nunangat is connected to the North American grid, and with the exception of Inuvik and Tuktoyaktuk, none are connected to the road system. Each community is served by a local power plant dependent upon fossil fuels, predominantly diesel, for power generation. To support the off-diesel transition, there is a need for an Inuit Nunangat Renewable Energy Fund. There is also a need for an Inuit Nunangat feed-in tariff for Inuit-owned power projects serving our communities. This would transcend jurisdictional boundaries and differing energy policies and provide direct support for Inuit renewable energy projects. We also need investments in telecommunications. Incremental investments in satellite technologies confuses industrial policy with telecommunications policy and is not cost-effective or a long-term connectivity solution. In order to remedy these challenges, ITK is seeking federal investment in regional fiber projects, beginning with regional feasibility studies. Inuit Nunagat faces a dire digital divide, one that has been noted by the federal government since the 1990s and reiterated most recently in the 2018 report on rural broadband by the Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology. Due to remoteness factors, internet connectivity has a more critical role to play in Inuit Nunagat than other parts of Canada in enabling access to health, education, and justice services, and in reducing the overall costs of public service delivery in Inuit communities. Other key investment areas include funding for the implementation of our National Inuit Climate Change Strategy, funding for the implementation of our National Inuit Strategy on Research, supporting Inuit language and culture in schools, and also then funding to implement the Act respecting First Nations, Inuit and Métis children, youth, and families. The specific considerations in relation to our funding are contained within our pre-budget submission that was provided to the Standing Committee, and that is also publicly available on our website at itk.ca. Nakumik.
Thank you very much, and I am going to come back to Ms. Vestrup. You had some remarks. If you can keep them fairly tight, we're going to run tight in questioning time. Go ahead.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm Heidi Sveistrup. I'm the CEO of the Briere Research Institute. It's the institute that's associated with the Briere Hospital, a multi-site academic hospital affiliated with Carleton and the University of Ottawa. At any one point, we're serving every day about 1,000 older adults, in addition to conducting research and teaching the next generation of health professionals. I know you've been hearing a lot about Canada's aging population, including earlier this week. I'm here today to talk about an alternative future to the sometimes fear-mongering that we have towards the silver tsunami, because as with any challenge, there's an opportunity. And global aging is actually a massive economic opportunity for our country. I'm going to provide the context for this economic opportunity and give 3 tangible recommendations for this committee to consider. So I'll start with an example. We know that Canada is in a long-term care bed deficit. In less than 15 years, we're going to need about 200,000 new long-term care beds. This is going to add billions of dollars to our healthcare costs annually. Long-term care is often viewed as a solution to the impacts of aging on our health system, but this is because we have inadequate supports to help people stay in their homes, where they want to be. While more beds are part of the solution, we can't continue to simply absorb the costs associated with our rapidly aging population. And I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with aging. I'm aging. But there is currently a dearth of alternatives to keep people out of expensive healthcare institutions. And we have to find a way to keep people at home longer, where they want to be. One way is by doubling down on research. And in this example, one focuses in an emerging branch of health care technology known as age tech. Age tech is providing distinct solutions for long-term care and healthcare by leveraging existing technologies like the Internet of Things, sensors, virtual reality, to provide digital home care and support for all Canadians, including aging adults. Age tech for the silver economy will be a multi-trillion dollar global market within the next half-decade, estimated to grow $8.5 trillion by 2025 in Europe alone. And here's our opportunity. As earlier stated, Canada is uniquely positioned to be a leader in age tech because of our hallmark public health system. We can leverage this through research, development, and commercialization to truly capitalize on the silver economy in ways that we never imagined. Here's how. We provided a pre-budget submission last year with 5 recommendations. I'm going to talk about 3. First, the government should continue to consult with industry and the research sector through its economic strategy tables and expand their focus to include age tech and the silver economy. Second, the government should renew funding for the Strategic Investment Fund, Stream 4, in pursuit of the Health and Biosciences Economic Strategy Table objectives. And third, expand federal research funding, including CIHR's Institute of Aging, to add more work on age tech and how these technologies can support healthy aging. As my colleague Paul-Émile has stated, leveling the playing field and ensuring that access to infrastructure and capacity building funding opportunities are open to academic health care organizations directly is critical to success. To unleash the potential of the silver economy, the government must implement ambitious policy packages targeting the aging population, such as those I've listed. These will enable and position Canada as a leader in the global age tech economy. Thank you for this opportunity. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you all. We will drop back to 5 minutes per individual in the first round and split up the last 4. Mr. Cooper, the first round.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lancaster,
Peter.
you talked about the stress test and in particular the renewal aspect in terms of changing lenders or being locked in. Do you know how many Canadians are impacted by that right now? In other words, they would like to or could potentially change lenders upon renewal, but are locked in because they would not satisfy the stress test.
Our organization does not have any statistics on that. We do know that approximately 70 to 75% of the residential lending is still being offered through federally regulated financial institutions. Philosophically, we support the notion of providing consumers the greatest degree of choice that's possible. And if you've got while still recognizing the need to balance the stress on the economy and the stress on the system, we believe that if a borrower has serviced their loan well and are not taking on any additional debt, that they should have the broadest base of choices available. But as to the numbers of people that may be directly impacted, I'm afraid we don't have those statistics. I know that others are looking at that kind of information, but that's not information we have on hand at this point.
Do you wish to add anything about the stress test more broadly? I know you had said the focus is on the renewal aspect, but do you have anything else to add? And I guess tied into that, I think you're right. We are talking about a group of borrowers who are low risk, doesn't add any financial stress onto the system in terms of making this change. So, I mean, is there any argument to say we shouldn't provide an exception? It just doesn't. It seems to me to be a no-brainer.
We've taken our perspective has been that we're not adding any additional stress to the system. Borrowers are not taking on any additional debt. So the public policy objective is not being encumbered by eliminating the stress test on renewals. As far as the remainder of the stress test across the balance of the market, it's important to recognize that our members are somewhat unique in the real estate value chain in that they have no vested interest in the outcome. Their sole function is to provide value, to confirm the market value, to confirm the value of the collateral for the borrower and for the lender. They're not there to they're not compensated if the deal closes any differently than if the deal does not close.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'll now turn to Ms. Rodriguez. You alluded to some gaps in terms of mental health supports and funding within the framework of a publicly administered healthcare system. Could you elaborate a little bit on some of those gaps that you see?
Certainly. So at the Canadian Mental Health Association, some of the gaps that we see are in access to community-based mental health care, access to counselors, access to psychotherapists, access to medication, and access to low-intensity supports and interventions for mental health. We see that wait times are increasingly long in this country, especially for vulnerable peoples and especially for youth. We see recent reports from Children's Mental Health Ontario, for example, indicating, if I can take a provincial example, indicating that wait times for youth are up to a year in some cases. We're saying wait for access to, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. How much time?
You're okay for
a minute and a half. Okay. Maybe then just elaborate on the $50 million that you're requesting. Is that a one-time commitment or maybe just expand upon that?
We would like to see an influx of funding as a one-time commitment to start, with core funding to sustain the organization at a national and then throughout the Federation following from that. What this would do is it would allow us to continue to provide the high-quality services that we are providing across the country. It would also allow us to expand, replicate, and scale the services and programs that we provide across the country. It would allow us to enhance the population-specific supports that we are currently working towards. And one thing that we didn't have an opportunity to address today, but that I can now, is that it would allow us to start to work towards responding to some of the key areas that we anticipate will be future areas of priority for mental health care, which specifically will look towards climate readying the mental health care system. We believe that mental health, that the implications of the climate emergency will be as much a public health issue as they will be a mental health issue. And so we're going to need to look towards solutions that will address that. And the Canadian Mental Health Association will be well positioned to provide that through interventions that will specifically look towards the mental health implications of the climate emergency.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Mr. Fragascatis, and then over to you, St. Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. I wanted to begin, if I could, with Mr. Cloutier. Or is it Dr. Cloutier or Mr. Cloutier?
No, my wife is a physician, but I'm not.
Oh. We'll go with that then. The mandate letter to the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, and I'm quoting here, says there's a need for the government to act and for the minister to act to strengthen the healthcare system in general terms. It also talks about putting in place measures to create a healthy society, and then it points to research as a way to get there. A lot of research happens in this country, health research specifically, not just at universities, but also in hospitals, which is something that not many Canadians know. I'm a member of Parliament from London, Ontario, and we have as I'm sure you know, a wide network of hospitals in the city and the region as well, and researchers working on these things at hospitals. Could you go into the importance of hospitals on the research end?
Well, I'll start, and I'll ask Heidi to complete. Sorry. The Dominic Barton, who you all know,
yes.
Started this particular table, and he approached us and said, he'd be interested in knowing what are the research hospitals doing in terms of innovation. And when he did his study, his first study that is, he concluded that if you really wanted innovation in Canada, and even that innovation to be commercialized, it would have to be done through research hospitals, because that's where it happens. I'm not against doing research in universities, because I think it's very important that they do the research.
Well, I have Western in the writing,
exactly.
Sir, so you don't have to.
That's why I said that.
I'm with you on that.
All right, but the results and the outcome in terms of patient care, delivering an efficient and better system, is more seen in a hospital setting than you would at the university, and also the commercialization. The issue that we had, if I may. The issue we had with ISED, with all its various programs like SIF 1, SIF 2, SIF 3, SIF 4, SIF 5, is that institutions like London, UHN, who have an enormous budget, could not lead any project unless it was led by the private sector. Now, we have nothing against private sector. Private sector is very important. But we wanted to lead the projects with private sector rather than having private sector leading it with us. And it's only after arguing about this with Minister Bain's office and the department that in SIF 4 they allowed our university research hospital to actually lead the innovation in partnership with the private sector. Okay. And you saw some of the results, which were enormous. I mean, $43 million was given at Sunnybrook, and $43 million was given in the West and McGill. So. And these projects will result into really concrete outcomes that will bring greater efficiency in the system.
But and I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Cloutier, but the amount of research then at hospitals, really the breadth and scope of what's being looked into. We can talk from anything about anything from infection prevention to cancer research to research on stroke, and the list is quite exhaustive, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Heart. And heart, yes, I'm not going to, and you're from London yourself, so I'm not going to forget you, Dr. Caron. But I do have limited time. I wanted to go to Mr. Viau. Désolé, monsieur, je parle un peu de français. En 2017, je commence
In 2017, I started immersion courses, and I'm continuing.
Electric buses in particular. In the mandate letter to the Minister of Infrastructure, it calls for the government to act to help school boards and municipalities purchase 5,000 electric buses over the next 5 years. We heard earlier we've heard from a number of witnesses on this issue. You mentioned Ms. Petrovan in your remarks. Her idea was that a rebate system could be used to help cities with this. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know that municipalities might push back and say, well, we don't have the money to put up front to invest in buses and in the infrastructure system to make that initial purchase in the first place. How do we best make this happen? How can we best help municipalities pay for the infrastructure, pay for the buses?
J'ai pas toutes les solutions pour vous.
I don't have all the solutions to offer you, but yes, indeed, we have to. And thank you for your question in French, and I hope you continue your progress because you're doing very well. But yes, the rebate is important to allow municipalities to buy buses. There are already programs in place that we have to improve to include electrification. It's not just equipment and vehicles like buses. There's adaptation too. There's the cost of adapting equipment in a garage, for instance, for this application. So we're talking about the creation of new funds. In Canadian municipalities, I worked at the City of Montreal for a few years. Canadian municipalities have huge transportation needs, be it the development of new infrastructure, but also questions of operation. There are large municipalities that are able to benefit from this, but we mustn't forget medium and small municipalities that do want to look into electrification. So what form the program should take, I'll let the experts in that field talk about that. And people on the Finance Committee can examine that issue too. But the needs do exist. We think it's by 2030 that the cost of an electric bus will be the same as a conventional bus. So between 2020 and 2030, we have that gap that we have to fill in order to allow Canadian municipalities to buy electric buses.
Both, then Mr. St. Marie, and then over to Mr. Blakey.
Oui, Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour. Merci de votre présence et de vos présentations.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here and for your presentations. I'd like to start with a remark, Mr. Chairman. Today we have 4 witnesses that are talking about health. When you look at Quebec, health is a priority in surveys or when we meet people. It's very important. Of course, the federal government is active in some sectors. We talked about statistics. When you look at the needs of Inuit and First Nations, for instance, or when it comes to research, there's a role to play. But the essential role of the federal government is the funding of healthcare. And unfortunately, in the past decade, we've been seeing continual decline. The federal government used to fund 50% of healthcare, and we've seen this decline year after year, to the point where the Quebec health minister, when it was a Liberal government during the last meeting, had accused the federal government in Ottawa of being predatory federalists. When we look at the Parliamentary Budget Officer's figures, he reminds us every year that the fiscal leeway remains in Ottawa, and within a few years, the provinces could crumble under debt because of the increase in healthcare costs. We have to take into account the aging of the population, too, in that funding. Now, having said all that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put 2 questions to Mr. Viau. First of all, with regard to COP21, the Paris Accords, the government stated that it wanted to respect those agreements. In your opinion, would it be useful for this Parliament to adopt legislation to force the government to respect the agreement? The second question that I'd like to put to you right away is you talked about the importance of supporting our farmers. when it comes to environmental measures. I'd like you to elaborate on that, please. Thank you. Well, with regard to your first question, yes, indeed. We feel that the federal government should pass legislation on climate to enshrine the targets in law. I believe that this is an intention that was already announced by the Environment Minister at the last COP meeting, and that is also in the letters of mandate of ministers. So that's an encouraging sign. It's something that we asked for the day before yesterday of the Quebec government in the audiences on Bill 44 on climate change. I think we are at a crucial moment in the fight against climate change and in the climate crisis, and it's by adopting targets that are more ambitious, and we hope they will be announced after COP26. So it's by adopting more ambitious targets and by making sure they are enshrined in law that we'll see environmental responsibility by this government and take action, a framework for action that's oriented toward those targets. Right now we have targets, indeed. They are not enshrined in law. They can be missed without any consequences. There are consequences, though. There are consequences on the environment. Regarding your second question, regarding support for agricultural producers, yes. Yes, you had said there should be measures to support the efforts of farmers to maintain soil capacity. Can you give us more concrete examples of this? Yes, that's being discussed a lot lately. There's a summit right now on nature-focused measures and the protection of biodiversity. These solutions are becoming more and more important. We still have a good deal of work to do to examine the best solutions that are nature-focused. In agriculture, that means a reduction in the use of pesticides. We can talk about different cover crops that allow for this. This is a question of resilience of the soil and carbon capture that's also important. So we're dealing with both aspects, the environmental aspect as well as production capacity. Soils in Canada, in various regions, are affected by various realities, be it erosion, or capacity problem and regeneration. So there are regional differences, but we feel that nature-based solutions are the way forward and will allow us to protect our production capacity, meet our objectives for production for domestic and export markets, and meet our needs to reduce greenhouse gases in a sector that produces 10% of greenhouse gases.
Mr. Viault, in your original remarks, you talked about the risk management program that it needs to apply to soils. I don't think that'll work. Risk management is basically agri-stability, agri-invest, etc. I do think you need to rejig that into, there's all kinds of programs across the country related to the environment that deals with soils. So if you could rethink that and maybe send us a note, I think that, because it just won't fit under the regular risk management programs. I know that for a fact.
Je vous remercie, puis ça me fera plaisir d'envoyer des informations complémentaires.
Thank you, and I'll be pleased to send complimentary information to members of the committee. We're talking about risk management that takes into account environmental issues.
Mr. Blakey, welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Glad to be here. I just want to start with a question for Mr. Lancaster from the Appraisal Institute of Canada. We hear sometimes talking about climate change, people that feel that climate change is a hoax, that it's part of a UN conspiracy, presumably for some people to get funding. Typically, folks in the financial industry are seen as pretty hard-nosed and not very sentimental when it comes to business decisions. I'm looking at your recommendation for better flood mapping, which I understand is supported as well by the Insurance Bureau of Canada. I mean, would you say that the financial sector recognizes that climate change is real, that it's happening, and that beyond the environmental consequences, that it will have a real economic impact, and that if we can mitigate the effects of climate change, we can not only help save the planet, but we can also help save a lot of money and economic distress in the meantime?
Well, I certainly don't feel qualified to speak for the financial industry, but what I can say is that climate change challenges have resulted in the impairment or the reduction of value of property that is secured by lending institutions. It has resulted in individual property owners seeing reductions in the value of their property, or the need to take additional steps to help protect that property from the impacts of climate change. It's very, very clear when you simply look at a city like Ottawa or a city like Montreal that was dealing with the amount of flooding that happened last spring. There are steps that need to be taken. There are steps that homeowners need to take to understand where they're looking to purchase or build a home, whether that be the outright decision to purchase or build a home in that area, or whether there needs to be additional steps taken in the construction to help protect that home. I don't think anyone can deny that we've seen the impact on the financial substance, if you will, of that real property. Certainly, the Insurance Bureau of Canada is well positioned to speak to the magnitude of that. But I would say that the financial industry in Canada is looking for good, stable investments. That's been a hallmark of the Canadian financial lending system, and certainly anything that would compromise that stability would be of concern to all aspects of not only the financial industry but also the organized real estate sector.
Right on. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask Dr. Cron. I was hoping that you might be able to expand a little bit on some of your remarks, both in terms of some of the work that's already been, it sounds to me like there's been a fair amount of work that's been done in order to set up the infrastructure for being able to collect data that could help us provide services more efficiently, but that there's some funding needed in order to be able to take what's already out there, bring it together, and really help it realize savings of tax dollars for Canadians. I know one of the big budget items this year is a $6 billion tax cut we know is going to disproportionately benefit people who are in the upper income quintile. And I'm wondering if some of that money were used and invested instead in trying to do some of the things that you were talking about, if that might not only help us deliver better service, but also help save money by offering those services more efficiently.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand your question. I think without a doubt, we often think that we've made the cutbacks and the restrictions that we can, and then when we look at the futility of some processes of care, it's pretty evident that more informed decisions by creating a better system will then allow us to then, for example, I'll give you a siloed budget example. There's tons of silos in our budgets in health delivery systems. So you have a patient who comes to the emergency room with, in this instance, a cardiac problem, and their cardiac problem is not sufficiently compelling to warrant admission to hospital, but their social setting creates a challenge. And so the ability to mobilize, for instance, the social support resources to allow that person to go home with cardiac follow-up the next day means a whole bunch of activation systems that aren't in place right now. So it's always easier to admit the patient to hospital, which then eliminates the person from Prince George coming by air ambulance tomorrow for the bypass surgery. So you have this lack of fidelity in the system to produce, precise care that's best for the patient. And part of that is to actually understand how it works, how often those situations happen. So a good example is we would not want operating rooms to go sit idle, and yet they do because of those kind of congestion problems. So a better managed system that's informed by how often that happens, what the processes are, where those patients come from, will then potentially result in more efficient use, in principle, moving facilities from inpatients to outpatients, which are cheaper. Providing care in the home, which we've also heard is a targeted value not only to the social state and mindset of the patient, but I think we would all cherish being in our home. And I think it doesn't have to be a cost bump. In fact, it can be a cost recovery process.
Right, and I guess
out of time, but I'll just say in this one, and Mr. Blakey's not on the Finance Committee regularly, but the Finance Committee had recommended 2 years ago, and followed up with Finance again last year, that the recommendation by the Canadian Cardiovascular Society be adopted in the budget. It's a simple $7.5 million over 3 years to mean better health care and measure results. Sounds simple enough to me. But Dr. Cran mentioned silos. Well, somewhere within the silos of government, and it's not in the Department of Finance, there's a problem getting this solved. So I'll just put that on the record. It needs to be solved, and the recommendation needs to be adopted. Mr. Poilievre, we'll go to 3.5 minutes each, and then over to Madam Kataris.
Hi, the question is for Mr. Landcastle. Your members are responsible for appraising values of property, correct?
Correct.
Do you spend any time or do any research on the composition of those values? What leads a property to go up in price, go down in price, or be the price that it is? Or do you simply evaluate the property and say this is what it's worth?
Our members consider any number of factors in arriving at an opinion of value.
Right.
Clearly, there are varying figures or varying inputs that will contribute to value. There was an article this morning in New Brunswick talking about green renovations to homes and suggesting that appraisers were diminishing those. And in fact, the response is the greenness of a home, if you will, the fact that this was a net zero home is one contributor to the value. Other things are very contributory as well. But at the end of the day, our members are largely commenting on what is happening in the marketplace at any given point in time.
The reason I ask is that in certain markets, prices have risen much more quickly than incomes.
Yes.
Now, low interest rates can explain some of that, but rates have been low for a long time now, and the increases have happened subsequent to those drops, and they continue to happen. To my knowledge, the materials have not gone up that much. The labor compensation has gone up, but not dramatically. So what is the leading cause of increases in housing prices, particularly in large metropolitan centers like Toronto and Vancouver, in view of your members?
I would suggest to you that many in organized real estate would agree that supply-side constraints in both the GTA and the GVA are probably the number one contributor to the escalation of value.
Which constraints?
Just the mere fact that there is not an increasing amount of housing units available at a time when more and more people are moving into those cities or those areas.
When prices go up, though, and surely the profits of building housing go up, so the market has a massive incentive to build housing. What's standing in the way of these profit-seeking builders from building?
Well, certainly the cycle time to bring new properties or new developments to market varies widely across municipalities across the country, but it is not an insignificant period of time. I recall a couple of years ago when Bombardier left the former Buttonville site, relocated to Pearson. They talked there about that creating the potential for several hundred new housing units, but in the same breath discussed the fact that it would probably be 5 or 6 years before those housing units could in fact be brought to market by the time all of the development processes took place.
Which process? Municipal processes?
Municipal approvals, environmental assessments as required, construction of the infrastructure, and so on.
It just, again, I keep coming back to this. everyone that's in this business says that the number one driver for higher prices is supply constraints imposed by municipal and provincial governments. And those increased prices then affect the entire market. They affect people who are lower on the economic scale the worst because they don't yet have property. Those who have property are better off because their main asset increases in value. But we keep hearing from municipal leaders that they need more money for social housing, but at the same time, municipal and provincial regulations are making housing more and more expensive. Do you see anything inconsistent about those two simultaneous phenomena, requests for more housing and restrictions on more housing?
I think it's important to remember that areas like the GTA get, Toronto gets approximately 100,000 new citizens each and every year.
Yeah.
These are people that are wanting to come, and they're at the household formation stage. So they are wanting to get into the housing market. And in fact, you're not seeing 100,000 new houses brought on year over year. So you're getting that disconnect between what is available to in the supply side versus the increased demand solely from the result of people moving into a community. And then you overlay that with the fact that people are urbanizing, they're wanting to remain closer to the downtown core, not deal with the commutes that they deal with in some cities. And I think you've got that collision between supply and demand.
We will have to cut it there. It's a good discussion. I let it go on considerable over. Ms. Katrakis and Mr. McLeod going to split about 4 minutes. Go ahead, Annie.
Yeah, thank you. For the interest of time, I will be very quick. I have one question to Dr. Cron. Thank you again for being here today. I also would like to thank the chair for his comments and, indicating what in the past mandate, what the recommendation was. I echo his comments, and I will be one of those people that will be strongly advocating for that. What is the level of support for this proposal? For your proposal, what is the kind of support that you see among the provinces? It would seem to me that the provinces would be on board as it leads to healthier, citizens. So if you can expand on that, please.
Thank you. So part of our homework has been to connect with all the ministries. I'm also a senior medical advisor at home for our cardiac branch of the ministry. We have letters of support from the ministries across the country to say this is a good idea. They don't have a federal lens from the standpoint of comparative information or the utilization of their data to compare. Part of is the anecdote of New Brunswick with no one to compare to within their province. Part of it is New Brunswick wanting to know how things turn out in other places. And so the ministries of health are very supportive of this notion, but don't have the, if you like, collective federal view to be able to put it together. We believe that's our role in conjunction with CIHI. That's already the federally mandated data collection system, but they lack the budget or infrastructure to then transform the data collection process into analysis, policy changes, practice changes, and so on.
Thank you both. Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one question for Mr. Obed. Thank you for the presentation. I hear from all jurisdictions in the north about the housing situation. People claim it's a housing crisis. Could you just talk a little bit about how that impacts the Indigenous people in all of the north?
Yeah. We've had a housing crisis in Inuit Nunagat for decades, and it is only getting worse. Currently, Inuit experience a 54% overcrowding rate in Inuit Nunagat, in our homeland. There have been specific federal investments in Inuit housing in the last 4 budgets, approximately $400 million in budgets 2016 and 2017. And they were transformative in their administration, that the federal government would partner with Inuit, and Inuit that would then decide how those monies flowed into housing solutions. We also, in 2019, have created an Inuit housing strategy with the Government of Canada through our Inuit Crown Partnership Committee. We also have worked with the Government of Canada to have ambition to end tuberculosis in Inuit Nunagat by 2030. We have a rate of tuberculosis that is over 300 times the rate of all Canadians born in Canada. And overcrowding is one of the key considerations in relation to tuberculosis and the spread of tuberculosis. So a transformative amount of money needs to be invested to eliminate the overcrowding in our communities, which will unlock economic potential, will impact positively on our mental health and physical health, and will also bring equity into this country in relation to Inuit and the rest of Canadians.
Thank you both. So we'll split the next 4 minutes between Mr. Cumming and Ms. Zerowitz. Go ahead, James.
Thank you for all of you coming here today. Mr. Cron, so I had a dad with a pacemaker, and one of the things that really impressed me was the advent of technology participating. He could monitor from home rather than having to go to the hospital, being able to do it remotely. And you talked about the collection of data, which I'm fully on side with you, that there seems to be a lot of silos in that collection of data. And you spoke about directly with the cardiac data. Can you offer an opinion? It's not just a cardiac issue. I would suspect that this is an issue of data collection throughout the medical field. And is the barrier just getting the systems in place, or are there interprovincial barriers too between the provinces on the sharing of that data?
There's barriers everywhere you go, for sure. There's barriers within provinces. So, I'm from a place with 5 health authorities where the privacy situations actually silo those health authorities from talking to each other. So the reason our provincial pacemaker database is actually in 5 non-speaking terms data sets is because of privacy. Believe it or not, we have the same platform for technology without the ability or permission to connect it. So that is a microcosm of what's happening federally from the standpoint of our ability to connect this. CIHI is one of those exceptions because it has a federal lens as its host. And although there are discussions, even things like data formats, universal language, data ownership, and so on, those of us who work in research also know the challenges of data utilization. This is a big problem. Part of the reason we believe that we are part of the solution is because CIHI is already collecting the data in a format that's at least a place to start. It doesn't include things like your dad's pacemaker data. But quite frankly, that data exists, and there isn't a reason the projects can't move towards that federalization of data systems with analysis and implementation. We're a national organization with practitioners across the country. So our 6 subcommittees that talk about the quality of things like pacemakers are content experts from across the country. And so they're in a position to look at this and say, for instance, is the population in Western Canada younger? And that's why their rate of outcomes is different. And so you need those content and process experts to be able to utilize the data to say, this then teaches us the following things that can change policy and process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cumming. Ms. Zerowitz, last question.
My question's to Ms. Sveistrup. Long-term care beds is beyond something that is so stressful for the people in my riding. We have an aging population in Canada, but more particularly in my riding. And let me tell you, they feel like we're just not ready. They are desperate for long-term care beds. And so to me, it's provincial jurisdiction. I do hear your recommendation about CHIR, and I know that you've indicated a consultation with the industry. Is that what your recommendation is in terms of how the federal government can best support this and best expedite more long-term care beds and more age tech, as you suggested? If you could elaborate on that and just be very concrete with us.
Sure.
Just because this is an area I really think we have to focus on.
I think this is a problem across the country.
Yes.
So long-term care is one solution, but I think if you talk to your parents or,
they want to stay at home.
They want to stay at home.
Mm-hmm.
If we can keep people out of long-term care for 6 months, for a year, in fact, down the street, so we have 2 long-term care homes, and there's another long-term care home that we've compared ourselves to. And individuals in the other long-term care home go in older, they go in a little sicker, they go in with much less time left at end of life. And so you say, well, that might be sad. But what's actually happening is a little bit of investment upstream for that group of population can actually keep them out of long-term care longer. So they're actually staying at home longer, maybe a year, 18 months, that they're spending in their community with their families, and then only going into long-term care when it's absolutely needed. And part of that is because of technology. So I think by developing technologies that we can use, a little bit like what Dr. Cron has said, how do we keep people with cardiac disease home? How do we support them in the community and keep them out of long-term care? It doesn't mean that we're not going to need more long-term care, but what we can do is actually try to do some work up front. The other thing is I think we have to look at our long-term care homes. The builds that we're going to make in the future have to be completely different. Net zero, spaces that we'd want to live in, not spaces that we visit now and we really don't enjoy visiting. So I think we have to really have a thought around not only the construction of our long-term care, but also what can we do up front to keep people living where they want to live.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We are basically on time, which is not always usual. Thank you each and everyone for your presentations and answering our question. I think we had a wonderful cross section during this panel. With that, we'll suspend for 5 minutes so people can grab a little bite, and we'll reconvene with the next panel. Meeting suspended. come to order. I want to welcome all the witnesses here and thank you for coming before the committee on short notice. We are doing just for the record, the pre-budget consultations on for the 2020 budget. And also just to inform you that any of the organizations that submitted a brief prior to the August deadline, that submission is considered part of the record as well, and the recommendations therein will be considered as well. We will have to, in this round, keep things as very, very tight as we can. Question period starts at 2 o'clock. The opposition has to find time to figure out how they're going to praise the government before when they get to question period, so we need to tighten it up quite a bit. So with that, we'll start with the first witness. Where's our list? Mr. Colby, Alberta Chamber of Commerce, and you're coming from Edmonton, Alberta. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Finance Committee. Thank you for having me to present to the Finance Committee and inform the upcoming budget. Above all, our recommendations are for the federal budget to center on prudence, pragmatism, and issues and opportunities that affect competitiveness. For introduction, the Alberta Chambers of Commerce is a voluntary federation of 124 community chambers in the province of Alberta that in turn represent in excess of 25,000 businesses. Alberta's current business environment can be characterized by three things: dropping confidence, rising unemployment and insolvency, and continued uncertainty. Under dropping business confidence, our provincial chamber network recently launched a major market research program, and here are some of the results. Last May, 70% of more than 700 businesses survey respondents indicated they were greatly or somewhat negatively impacted by federal regulations, which is more than any other order of government. 6 months later, our next survey received more than 1,000 responses and showed that business confidence in the long-term future of our province dropped more than 20 points since May, with 54% of respondents having a negative outlook. Only 33% of businesses were likely to recommend setting up or investing in a business in their municipality. And as a Chamber of Commerce person, you know it pains me that I have to tell you this. Under unemployment, recent numbers show that Alberta's unemployment levels continue to top all provinces and territories outside of Atlantic Canada. Edmonton came in the last results at 8%, and Calgary came in fifth at 7.1%. Under the issues, as a nation, we have an uncompetitive regulatory and tax environment system characterized by growing vulnerability to global trade conflicts. China's blockade of canola, beef, and pork exports dramatically impacted Alberta's economy and farmers. Escalating fiscal vulnerability to economic slowdown and rising interest rates, yet continuing to spend. A recent Fraser Institute study noted that the federal government will have increased per person federal debt by 5.6% from 2015 to 2019, the largest increase of any government whose time in office didn't include a world war or recession. Continued uncertainty around projects of national significance, such as the Teck Frontier Oil Sands Mine project, which is projected to provide more than $70 billion in royalties and tax revenues. Growing feelings of alienation by Western provinces, which further exacerbates the uncertainty for Alberta business. The arbitrary cap of $60 per person for the fiscal stabilization program is a concern. Premier has requested the difference of what Alberta would have received over 2015-17 during the height of our economic downturn without the arbitrary cap on stabilization transfers. Transferring the $2.4 billion as requested could certainly help ease the tension in Western Canada. For reference, this is only 1 to 2% of taxes that have been sent to Canada from Alberta residents over the same time period. In our May market survey, we asked both business and public respondents about their support for turning off the taps on oil exports to BC if the federal and provincial governments continued to delay pipeline infrastructure projects. 66% of business respondents were very somewhat supportive. It was even higher amongst respondents in natural resources, energy, and utilities. 67% of public respondents were very or somewhat supportive, certainly a statistically valid sample of Albertans. Businesses will be directly affected if a number of options being considered by the Alberta government's Fair Deal panel are implemented, like withdrawing from the Canada Pension Plan. Our recommendations for the budget and policy priorities take an active role in reducing barriers to internal trade. Recent IMF estimates are that removing internal trade costs could boost the national economy by 4% or nearly $5,700 for every family in Canada. Second recommendation, modernize the tax system with a full review. We believe a Royal Commission is the best approach. In the interim, till that happens, we have suggestions on other policies, such as a modernization of the tax code, for example, updating the Act to allow companies mining lithium brine found typically in oil and gas formations to issue flow-through shares to raise capital would enable growth of an estimated $85 billion industry. The lithium mine could be used for electric vehicles, electric vehicle batteries, among many other applications to support diversification within our energy industry. Commit to regulatory streamlining and reducing overall TAPE burden. Prioritize accelerating the planning and permitting process for northern trade corridors, such as the National Northern Infrastructure Corridor. And one last major recommendation, in consideration of the budget, please do no harm and avoid one-size-fits-all approaches. Apply a gaps-based approach to any national pharmacare plan. Amend one of the other issues that is very important to not only home builders in our province is to amend the mortgage stress test to allow for regional markets. What we're finding is that not only are home builders affected by this, but all the attendant industries that support the home building industry. Mr. Chair, that is my presentation. I'm prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cobley, and we'll go to those questions when we finish the panel on this end, and thank you for appearing. With the Canadian Juries Commission, Ms. Danzier and Mr. Ferrand. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, honorable members of the Finance Committee, for inviting us here today. My name is Mark Farrant. I'm the founder of the Canadian Juries Commission, a not-for-profit representing Canadians serving on jury duty and on coroner's inquests. I founded this organization based on my experience as a juror on a first-degree murder trial that left me shattered and living with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I'd like to introduce my colleague and friend, Tina Danzier, who will speak for a moment.
25 years ago, I served... Sorry, this is very emotional for me. I served on the Paul Bernardo trial. During that trial, I was required to watch graphic video of girls being raped, tortured, and begging for their lives. Each night, I would go home and replay those videos in my head. After the trial, I was diagnosed with PTSD. It was an experience that changed my life forever. While much of this trauma has been placed inside a small box of my mind, there are times when it opens and my heart starts to palpitate, probably like right now. Entrenched in our Canadian Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, jury duty is a fundamental element within the Criminal Code of Canada. Every year, thousands of citizens are summoned to step away from their families and workplaces to serve. Jurors are addressed as officers of the court. A judge is a judge of the law, and the jurors are the judges of the facts. But it's the jury that delivers the verdict. As the cornerstone of the justice system, it's the most important civic duty asked of Canadians. Yet there is a great lack of respect shown for their needs. Jurors are not compensated, protected from outside threats, and failure to show for a summons is punishable by fine or imprisonment. First responders and jury members are bookends of the justice system. Jurors deliver the verdict for the same crimes answered by first responders and investigated by police. Exposed to the same graphic evidence of human cruelty, violence, homicide, sexual assault, and unspeakable acts, they're not offered an opportunity to turn away from the evidence and indeed must often view it over and over again. They can't ask to turn it off. They must endure it. This is the burden of the duty, along with the task of reaching a verdict based on facts and evidence. The judge, legal counsel, court staff, police, first responders are all afforded access to new and evolving evidence-based treatments. But the jury is not. We now understand the toll these crimes have on those working in public safety, our courts, resulting in PTSD, depression, illness, and mounting cases of suicide. We've worked hard to establish programs for first responders to support them in their healing, respecting the important work they perform in our communities. The jury are similarly impacted, experiencing the same trauma, the same devastating ill health impacts, but unlike their public safety counterparts, have no professional training related to their role, no access to evidence-based treatments, and no organization representative from associations working on their behalf. They have no voice. I'm now going to hand it over to my partner, Mark.
Despite its core function, jury duty has been vastly overlooked, undervalued, and underinvested, and has not kept pace with the modern world. Many jurors have expressed frustration from the lack of support for their service, employers who have felt inconvenienced, even suggesting employees are somehow responsible for being selected above their duties and commitment to the workplace. Honorable members of the committee, jury duty is not a vacation. It is not time off or a break from the office. We all have a collective responsibility to support jury duty and respect the role it plays within our democracy and justice system. Through advocacy, we've raised the issue of jury duty trauma, mental health concerns, and the vast gaps in the system that exist today to the highest levels of public office. The House of Commons Justice and Human Rights Committee unanimously agreed to undertake a landmark study on this issue and produced a groundbreaking report complete with 11 actionable recommendations. The Canadian Juries Commission was born of these recommendations and has gone well beyond to address additional fundamental concerns and provide fact-based solutions to improve jury duty. We hereby request an investment from this government to improve jury duty for all Canadians, an investment that will build confidence in the institution and a desire amongst citizens to welcome the opportunity to sit in court, not find a way to be excused from service. While this government has made commitments to stem firearm-related crimes, homicide, money laundering, gang-related activities, human trafficking, and online child sexual exploitation, we should be reminded that jurors will be tasked with the delivering of a verdict in those very cases. This government's commitment to fulfill the mission of the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and actions to reduce violence against and victimization of Indigenous women, girls, and the LGBTQS2 persons stems from the proliferation of cases that are before the court right now, which jurors will address and be tasked to address through the law. Honorable members of the committee, we request that honoring these vital justice and public service commitments and investments demands an equal and directed investment in improving and supporting jury duty. Our 10-year plan and $20 million investment will renew confidence amongst Canadians in jury duty and provide the supports to ensure Canadians can perform their task and return to their lives and families proud they've served their country and the justice system. With an investment of $20 million from the Government of Canada, the Canadian Juries Commission will be able to do the following: support jurors through partnerships with mental health professionals, workplace support for employees and employers, promote jury duty to Canadians, study jury duty and identify the barriers and drivers Canadians have experienced in and out of the court. Create a national office that represents all regions of the country in both official languages and Indigenous languages to give jurors a voice. Work to ensure a more diverse and inclusive jury pool, especially in the Indigenous community. Jury duty is a civic duty, but it's not a duty to suffer. It is our obligation to support our citizens throughout all aspects of jury duty, and the responsibility of our government and the Canadian Juries Commission to see that support is provided and carried through. Thank you for allowing us to appear before you today.
Thank you both for your presentation and expressing your health-felt concerns, emotions included. They make a point as well, so thank you. Going back to video conference from Toronto, Miss Kennedy with EGAL Canada.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present via video conference this afternoon. I'm Helen Kennedy. I'm the Executive Director of EGAL, Canada's national LGBTQI2S human rights organization. I'm going to focus my remarks this afternoon on EGAL's recently released document, which I believe you all have received earlier this morning. It's EGAL's national LGBTQI2S action plan. There are a number of points that are raised in the action plan, but I'm going to refer to 4 recommendations for the committee here this afternoon. Recommendation 1, that the government review the recommended policy reforms in EGAL's national LGBTQI2S action plan and take immediate action to amend their outdated and discriminatory policies to advance Canada's economic development. Recommendation 2, that the government mandate inclusive policies and training across each of the 12 sectors in our national LGBTQI action plan. Recommendation 3, that the government update your outdated data collection terminology to be more inclusive for research across the 12 priority areas in the National Action Plan, and engage community organizations in the research, implementation, collection, and reporting process. Our 4th and final recommendation is that we firmly recommend that the federal government establish an LGBTQI2S Action Plan Implementation Fund of $12 million over 2 years to be allocated to civil society organizations to continue this important work. Recently, EGAL launched this national LGBTQI2S action plan, which addresses 12 priority areas that impact our community across Canada. Along with each priority area, there are tangible action items for the government to prioritize over the next 2 to 4 years. The recommendations contained in our plan are a result of extensive literature reviews, assessments of current policies and legislation, and community consultations. The 12 key priority areas are healthcare, mental health, poverty reduction, housing and homelessness, employment access, education, sport inclusion, our seniors, justice reform, intersex rights, asylum system reform, and international assistance. EGAL firmly recommends that Canada invest and prioritize strategies, programs, and policies that ensure inclusion and human rights for sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression minorities in this budget. The following brief focuses on these key investments. And in moving forward with our action plan recommendations, not only will the government be acknowledging the work that civil society organizations are currently undertaking, it will also be maintaining its position as a global leader and partner in advancing LGBTQI2S human rights. Within the plan, there are core areas where the government can begin to advance specific and measurable actions to drive inclusion and support civil society in advancing LGBTIQ2S inclusion in Canada. LGBTI communities experience the largest gaps in housing access and income security. 20 to 45% of our homeless youth 20 to 45% of Canada's homeless youth population identify as members of the LGBTQI2S community. Our healthcare system, LGBTI Canadians experience stigma and discrimination within the system. And 27% of transgender patients have been refused care. LGBTIQ2S people continue to experience discrimination in the workplace or the workforce. 49% of our trans Canadians earn less than $15,000 a year, and that is if they're fortunate enough to actually have employment. There are a number of policies and legislative reforms across the 12 sectors where the federal government can take immediate action to advance social inclusion. priority should be given to intersex human rights, federal regulations on conversion therapy, and regulations around blood donation for men who have sex with men and trans people. Gender-based and LGBTQI2S discrimination in social institutions matters for economic growth. Previous empirical studies demonstrate that gender inequality in outcomes is bad for growth, especially when it comes to gender disparities in education and labor. There are a number of policies and regulations driving these results, the most pertinent of which are discriminatory laws, policies, and biases that perpetuate stereotypes and mindsets that undermine LGBTQI2S inclusion efforts. By shaping and influencing norms of acceptable behavior and power relations between the sexes, discriminatory social institutions are additional key issues for economic growth. By dismantling the discriminatory policies laid out in our action plan, the government will be advancing inclusion on a foundational level across our society and culture, resulting in higher economic returns. Establishing more inclusive policies and mandating inclusion training across the 12 sectors in our plan will help to both increase LGBTIQ2S inclusion in the workforce and remove some of the barriers to access that LGBTQI2S people face when seeking out support services, whether it be physical health, mental health, or employment. The World Bank released a case study in 2012 on LGBTQ discrimination, and it showed that the cost of discrimination across health and labor alone is as high as 1.7% of the annual GDP. LGBTQI2S people in Canada are vital contributors to our economic growth. The LGBTQI2S market in Canada is between $90 to $100 billion, or about 7.2% of Canada's GDP. And workplaces that are supportive of LGBTQI2S employees witness a 22% increase in team productivity and represent a 17% increase in LGBTQI2S employee retention. By supporting healthy and safe workplaces for members of the LGBTIQ2S community, Canada's economy has an opportunity to increase twofold, as LGBTQI2S people also become more adequately supported out of poverty. This same example applies when looking at access to healthcare, a major contributor to potential labor loss and added health costs down the road. The estimated economic burden of mental illness and substance use across Canada annually are $51 billion and $38.4 billion, respectively. Overall, health disparities for LGB people in Canada, not including trans, calculated an annual loss of $500 million to $2.3 billion. When considering costs related to healthcare, criminal justice, and lost productivity, the cost of excluding LGBTQI2S people becomes insurmountable. The government can take immediate action on developing inclusive policies to help offset this cost burden through implementing the recommendations laid out in EGAL's National LGBTQI2S Action Plan. We commend the...
I hate to interrupt, but see if you can, I know there's a
I'm going to wrap it up.
If you can wrap it up fairly quickly.
I'm going to wrap it up. In the recent mandate letter to Minister Chagger, the PMO tasked to consult civil society representatives of the LGBTQ2 communities to lay the groundwork for an action plan. EGAL's action plan not only aligns with the priorities laid out in Minister Chagger's recent mandate letter, but identifies additional opportunities for the government to work on. And through the establishment of the LGBTQI2S Action Plan Implementation Fund, your government will be effectively engaging with civil society organizations by supporting the community to advance and prioritize the work that is needed to build a more inclusive Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that document, we have received it, and members will get a copy as soon as we complete translation. And that'll be soon. Mr. Lamy with the Intact Financial Corporation.
Good afternoon. Bonjour. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Matthew Lamy. I'm Executive Vice President and COO of Intact Financial Corporation. Intact is the largest provider of property and casualty insurance in Canada and a leading provider of specialty insurance in North America. We employ almost 16,000 people, 15,000 people based across all provinces in Canada. Just over 10 years ago, we brought the leadership of the property and casualty insurance industry back to Canada, establishing Intact Financial Corporation as an independent, widely held company. Today, we insure 1 in 5 Canadian and 1 in 4 small, medium-sized business in this country. Every year, we help over 500,000 Canadians to get back on track to our claim services. Intact values the relationship that we have with all levels of government. We have many shared interests in a changing world. Today, I would like to focus my remarks on 3 ways that we can protect and grow Canada's economy competitiveness. First, preparing our workforce for the future and making Canada a destination for top talent. Second, investing in climate resilience. And third, ensuring financial resilience in the face of a devastating earthquake. Comme vous le savez, il faut absolument préparer notre main-d'œuvre pour l'avenir pour demeurer.
As you know, we absolutely must prepare workers for the future to remain competitive economically. Better access to training will allow workers to have the skills they need to adapt and succeed. Over the next 10 years, we want to be a world leader in artificial intelligence in the insurance sector. Intact was among the first to use artificial intelligence. Since 2016, our data lab has gone from 5 internal experts in AI to a team of over 140, and 60 AI models are in productions. It's important to underscore that efficiency gains that we've achieved through AI are not done to the detriment of jobs. We have saved money because of these new systems, but we've also continued to invest in our people so that they could have access to training and opportunities to acquire new skill sets. Talent is rare, and talent and experience in insurance is even rarer. Government policies such as the Canadian Training Benefit, which provides credits for training and income assistance, can help this. We will continue to invest in the AI ecosystem in Canada by recruiting talent and establishing partnerships with universities such as Laval in Quebec City, Vector Institute in Toronto, and the Institut de Valorisation des Données, IVADO, in Montreal. Given that government demand for AI continues to grow, it's essential that governments also invest in AI in ecosystems in Canada. These are nurseries for talent in the public and private sectors.
On the importance of protecting Canadians for the escalating risk of climate change and extreme weather events such as flood and fire. At Intact, we have helped our customer deal with the impact of climate change from sometimes, and the 4,000 individuals who work in our claims operation have been on the front line of this. In recent years, the majority of home insurance claims have been related to severe and extreme weather. The economic impact of these events have on communities cannot be understated. For example, the Calgary Southern Alberta flood in 2013 cut $750 million in GDP and $320 million in the personal disposable income of Albertans. For every $1 of insurable losses, there are $3 or $4 of uninsurable losses absorbed by government, businesses, and ordinary citizens. Intact has been investing in climate change, adapting in Canada for the past 10 years, and we will continue to do so. We've established the Intact Centre on Climate Adaptation at the University of Waterloo, an applied research center dedicated to help cope with the effect of extreme weather and climate change. In its platform, the government announced several important measures to help prepare our communities for climate risk and realities, including the development of a low-cost national flood insurance program. While this is a large multi-year undertaking, we are hopeful that the government can make some immediate steps to help protect Canadians, such as working with provinces and territories to complete all the flood maps in Canada, developing a national action plan to assist homeowners with potential relocation for those at the highest risk of repeat flooding, and investing in natural infrastructure solutions like grassland, wetland, that act to reduce the economic impact of floods. Lastly, climate change is not the only obstacle to our economic resilience. We have also been working with various stakeholders, including the Department of Finance, on addressing the financial and systemic risks surrounding the very real possibility of a major earthquake in Canada. Canada is fortunate to have a solid and stable insurance industry that is highly regulated and well capitalized. But when you consider that Canada has close to 40% of its population and economic activity directly exposed to severe earthquake risk, particularly in Vancouver and along the Quebec, Montreal, and Ottawa corridor, a major earthquake in a highly populated area remains one of the most destructive natural disasters that our country could experience. Despite this significant risk, Canada remains one of the few countries where the government offers no financial protection related to earthquakes. While insurers have been increasing their capitalization for major earthquake, insurance alone will not be enough to pay for the damage. Canada's insurance industry has warned that a catastrophic earthquake could overwhelm its ability to meet claims, deepening the quake's economic aftershocks. This is why we continue to call on the government to develop a federal emergency earthquake backstop to ensure we can continue to protect Canadians' households while ensuring the solvency of our industry. In conclusion, the government and the insurance industry have an important role to play in these issues to help Canadians prepare our workforce for the future, invest in making our communities and economy resilient to the impact of climate, and ensure that our country can be resilient in the face of a devastating earthquake, are important issues. Intact is committed to collaboration, and we believe that there is a lot that governments can do to build a more resilient society working with our industry. I would be pleased to answer any question. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Matthew. With JDRF Canada, Mr. Proughton, President and CEO, and Ms. Sullivan. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. JDRF is the leading charitable funder of research to cure and prevent type 1 diabetes, and I am joined by Angie Sullivan, who is a mother of a child with type 1 diabetes today. Until 1921, when Canadians Sir Frederick Banting and Charles Best discovered insulin, type 1 diabetes was a death sentence. And thanks to their landmark discovery, the 300,000 Canadians living with type 1 diabetes today not only survive, they thrive. And on the eve of the 100-year anniversary of insulin's discovery, we're here to offer recommendations to improve the lives of Canadians who live with type 1 diabetes today. Type 1 diabetes remains a daily struggle for Canadians. It's a relentless 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week disease requiring constant monitoring and attention. And even with the most advanced glucose monitoring technology now available, there's a constant risk of dangerously high blood sugar, leading to costly long-term complications, and life-threatening low blood sugars, which may lead to confusion, coma, and even death. To improve the lives of Canadians with type 1 diabetes, we have 4 recommendations for the committee. Our first recommendation is that the government should support the Canadian Institute for Health Research's 100 Years of Insulin proposal. This proposal would leverage nearly $50 million in research commitments by CIHR and its partners, including JDRF, with $50 million in additional funding to create a $100 million fund. $100 million to mark 100 years would be a timely tribute to Banting and Best, accelerate Canadian discoveries to defeat diabetes, and certainly keep our leadership position in this field of research. As recommended by the Standing Committee on Health, our second recommendation is that Canada implement a national diabetes strategy called Diabetes 360, with specific outcomes for type 1 diabetes, including new funding for research in areas such as prevention. An investment of $150 million over 7 years will put us on the path to ending the burden of diabetes for Canadians and will save billions in downstream healthcare costs. Diabetes is a costly disease, not only for our healthcare system, but for individuals and families. Depending on which province you live in and what type of benefits package you have through your employer, Canadians with diabetes may be out of pocket as much as $15,000 annually. So our third recommendation, fitting for the 100th anniversary of the discovery by Banting and Best, is that the various types of insulin used by Canadians today should be included in the formulary under the National Pharmacare Program. JDRF has a concern that the emergency medicines list referenced by the Advisory Council on the implementation of National Pharmacare does not contain the types of long-lasting and fast-acting insulins used by Canadians today. And our final recommendation that we would like to make this year is to request that the government permanently fix the Disability Tax Credit, or the DTC, so that it actually works for Canadians. JDRF has advocated in the past for reducing the number of hours needed to qualify for the DTC from 14 to 10. A similar approach was proposed by Mr. Kimmich in the Fairness for Canadians with Disabilities Act that he introduced last session. And recently, the Disability Advisory Committee, appointed by the Minister of National Revenue, proposed an even better solution: that qualification be automatic for all Canadians who need life-sustaining therapy, including insulin, which is certainly a life-sustaining therapy. So to speak more on the impact of the Disability Tax Credit, I will now turn things over to Angie.
Thank you, Dave. My son Jake has lived with this disease since age 16. He's now 25. His current employment has 0 benefits, and those benefits he was receiving previously through the Ontario government ended on his 25th birthday. This leaves him struggling to pay thousands of dollars for his next insulin pump, plus thousands more every year for insulin, for test strips, for pump supplies, for CGM sensors, not to mention the time and the cost of transportation to and from medical appointments. It's heartbreaking to have your child tell you he's not eating properly and is limited in his ability to participate in sports and social activities because he can't afford to replace his costly supplies. Or to hear that he's no longer replacing his glucagon, a hormone used by diabetics in an emergency to counter a severe low blood sugar event. Perhaps worst of all, I know he's rationing his insulin and pump supplies, and I'm afraid on a daily basis for his life and his long-term health care. As a parent, I find it absolutely appalling that essential drugs and medical supplies are not covered 100%. Until such time as they are, the disability tax credit is at least some help for those who manage to qualify. I'd ask you to recommend to Canada's Minister of Finance that the DTC be fixed once and for all, so that all Canadians with type 1 diabetes qualify. Please, let them live a life that's fair and just, without penalty for a disease that they did not choose. I'd like to thank JDRF and Dave for their work and thank the committee for hearing our testimony. You'll find more information on JDRF's written pre-budget submission. We hope you'll consider our recommendations in your deliberations and final report. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both very much. Then Mr. Leduc, Senior Vice President with Tech Nation. You're on.
Mr. Chair, members of the Finance Committee, it's a privilege to be here today on behalf of Tech Nation. We're the National Technology Industry Association. We represent over 300 employers, innovators, entrepreneurs, including homegrown small and medium-sized enterprises and multinational leaders in the technology space. Our members work every day to foster a prosperous, responsible, and secure digital economy for Canada. Our sector employs over 1 million Canadians, and we are the driving force between Canada. We are the growing force behind Canada's growing economy into the future. In other words, the digital economy is the economy. Notre mémoire prébudgétaire.
Our pre-budget brief includes 3 themes that will guide my remarks here today: digital government, the digital economy, and responsible technology. Although the public sector, including the federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments, are big buyers of technology services, their adoption of technology is lagging.
Outdated procurement processes for IT products and services that has long been acknowledged as a barrier that limits small and medium-sized enterprise participation, slows deployments of technologies in public sector, and limits the improved services that Canadians expect. In our submission, we recommend that the federal government undertake pragmatic steps to innovate the procurement process, including developing a commercial-first approach. All parties agree that fighting climate change is an existential threat. Our sector is proud to be leading the way, with several of our TechNation members already achieving net zero emissions for their companies. Our sector offers a unique opportunity for government to contribute to this work. Federal government legacy data centers and the servers where government digital infrastructure is based are costly and inefficient. A large data center can use enough energy in a single day to power 65,000 homes, with no more than 12% of that energy output typically used for actual computing. The remaining energy runs backup servers and maintains climate control. The Government of Canada owns and uses hundreds of data centers. Recently, the President of Shared Services Canada, Paul Glover, admitted the public service doesn't actually know how many data centers they're actually running. TechNation advocates that as part of the work of the government to modernize, Budget 2020 must invest in the transitioning from these inefficient and costly data centers to cloud computing. Taking this action will reduce energy while improving service delivery to Canadians. And for our members, this would be a no-brainer. TechNation
feels that the government must commit to a transition of 80% of its operations toward the cloud by 2025. Moreover, the government must also commit to offering all public sector services online during the next 5 years. These objectives are reasonable, achievable, and necessary to modernize the Government of Canada and provide the services that Canadians need in order to follow technological evolution.
18, the Governor of the Bank of Canada, Stephen Pallott, said, and I'll quote, "Technology advances represent opportunities to be seized, not a force to be resisted." In May of last year, he recommended and commended the information technology sector, along with other service industries, for being the driving force behind Canada's economic growth. Nous savons également que le Canada est à la...
We also know that Canada's in the vanguard of R&D for new technology. Our university and collegial education system is among the best in the world. Let's take, for example, AI. Today, we have about 4,000 AI companies operating across Canada. However, most of these companies are not prospering much. In simple terms, to remedy the inability of technology companies to evolve in Canada, the 2020 budget must respond to a simple idea. We don't have an innovation problem in Canada, but a problem with adopting our innovations.
Submission recommends that Budget 2020 review the SR&ED tax credit to incentivize startups to grow and scale. It also recommends that Canada invests in its skilled workforce, including reskilling and upskilling the public sector's own. Finally, we advocate for smart infrastructure, including investments in rural connectivity, the deployment of 5G networks, and the liberation of data for use by artificial intelligence. Further, we advocate that the government commit in Budget 2020 to creating the data frameworks necessary to unlock our economic potential.
Sum up quickly.
Yep. By leading all levels of government, the Government of Canada can foster more user-friendly, adaptable, and agile data that will allow technology like AI to grow and innovate within our economy. By investing in digital government and our digital economy, we can help Canadian SMEs grow and scale, we can help combat climate change, and we can provide digital services to Canadians. This will lead to economic growth, fostering innovation, and improving our international competitiveness. I welcome your questions. Thank you.
And for those witnesses that didn't get to go through all the remarks, they will be translated and given to committee members in any event. So we are going to really tighten it up. We'll have to go to, I'd like to get as many as we could in. There may be a couple of members have to leave early, so that's fine too. So we'll start with Mr. Cumming, 4 minutes, and then over to Ms. Sirowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses, particularly Ms. Danzner and Ms. Sullivan, for your very personal remarks. Very much appreciate your stories. I would like to address most of my questions towards Mr. Colby. Mr. Colby, you've painted a pretty dire picture of what's going on in Alberta right now with business confidence, high unemployment rate. I don't think you mentioned the flight of capital as well. Can you maybe elaborate on the ground with your members about what we need to see in the province as it relates to regulation, deregulation, access to markets, access to capital, all those things that are really impeding Alberta's ability to grow and grow the economy and employ people?
Sure. Thank you for the question. What certainly amongst our members is that the lack of confidence is based on all of those issues that you cited. The regulation with federal regulations. Currently, as you know, I'm sure, Government of Alberta is looking at a red tape reduction strategy. They're making great strides toward that, and that's helping with that level of confidence or lack of confidence. Certainly, when we take a look at the regulations, when you take a look at access to capital, when you take a look at taxation, when you take a look at, say, regulations through the Income Tax Act, it's not just one of those items that is affecting the confidence level of Alberta businesses. You top onto that the uncertainty and the long protracted period that we've had with trying to get approvals to stick on pipelines. We're waiting now for approval of the Tech Frontier mine, which I think is going to be a real test for the Government of Canada as to whether they approve it or not. My point is, those individual one-offs on their own could affect confidence, but when you get a layering of those issues, one on top of the other, and when you get basically an overall negative outlook on the economy, certainly I think what it does is it sends, particularly for small businesses, into I guess a spiral of negativity, and that builds on itself. And then you also add to the whole issue of Albertans and Alberta businesses feeling that over the last 5 to 6 years, since we started this most recent downturn, that Alberta's been left to its own devices to try to climb out of this. It certainly creates an issue that Alberta is feeling, and its residents by default are feeling that perhaps the Government of Canada and the rest of Canada doesn't really care about the reality of what's going on in our province.
How important is market access for the companies in Alberta? It looks like TMX will eventually make its way to market, but how important is additional market access to the province?
Well, it's hugely important. I mean, when we take a look at where we have the differential at right now between the price of West Texas Intermediate and Western Canadian Select, That's exacerbated by basically the plug that we have or the capacity issues that we have in the current pipelines. So market access is huge for us, and that also has contributed to some, I think, of the negative outlook from business. And look it's not just oil and gas who's affected by this. It's the people who service the oil and gas industry. It's the people who provide the hotels. It's the house builders. Every one of those individuals are affected by what's going on in the oil and gas industry, particularly due to lack of access or full access to Tidewater.
Move on to Ms. Zerowitz and then Mr. St. Marie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank everyone for their excellent presentations. And wow, what a diversity. And because of limited time, just know that even though you might not be asked questions, know that your recommendations were heard and that we will be taking them into consideration. My questions my initial questions are actually to the Alberta Chamber of Commerce as well. You mentioned this, sir, just a few minutes ago. I think it's part of a narrative that's circulating in our society that I think is unhealthy. And that's that the East doesn't care about Western Canada, doesn't care about Alberta, doesn't care about the economy in the West, doesn't care about the oil and gas sectors. And in my downtown West riding of Toronto, for the vast majority of people, I would say there's nothing further from the truth. What we really care about is we care about our commitments around the Paris Accord. We care about moving urgently and faster to achieve them. And if anything, we want to help Alberta and the Western provinces and those with high GHG emission sectors to actually transition. There's no fight against workers. And no one wants to make anyone make a choice between paying a paycheck and fighting climate change. So my question to you is, what can the federal government do to help Alberta businesses become more sustainable and to invest in transitioning into a low-carbon economy?
Mr. Colby?
In the environment. I think the Prime Minister and the Premier both agreed to that. However, when we talk about the narrative that's circulating is hurtful, you bet it is. I'm a proud Canadian, I'm a proud Albertan. I've lived in Alberta all my life. Sometimes perception is reality. And right now what I'm telling you is that the perception of a huge number of Albertans is that they feel abandoned and that they feel that the rest of Canada does not care. I think if we're looking towards one of the measures, certainly, that the government of Canada could take to show that, look, we're here, we got your back, we're going to help you, not provide charity, we're here to help you. We recognize the contribution that Alberta has done and had for the economy over many, many years, is to address the issue of the sustainability transfers, to take it to the amount that it should be sitting at rather than at the artificial $60 per capita cap. I think that would go a long ways towards Western Canadians, particularly in Alberta, recognizing that the rest of Canada, particularly the government of Canada, is behind them. As far as how you can upscale folks to transition from the current economy, certainly, and it was in one of the recommendations, I'm sorry that I didn't mention earlier, and I know that my communications guy is probably watching this and saying, how come you're not doing this, is to prioritize spending on skills for the future and to make that transition, to make that move, to give kids who are coming out of post-secondary institutions the opportunity for that first job. We at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce have a work-integrated learning program.
So sorry to cut you off. So I did hear that recommendation. I think it's an important one. I just want to get one more comment in. The Just Transition Act. So we made a commitment in our platform that we would introduce a Just Transition Act that would give workers access to training, support, and new opportunities to succeed in the new economy. Do you think that's something that would be helpful?
You know what, I think what we would need to do before I comment on that would be to review more of the details of what's proposed within that act. I haven't seen those details, so before I would comment as whether it's going to be effective or not, I'd actually have to see the document.
Thank you.
Okay, turning to Mr. St. Marie, but as I'm going across here to the next questioner, just to point out the impact of what's happening in Alberta certainly affects right across the country, and it certainly affects us in Atlantic Canada. As little as 6 years ago, there is 25 flights a week out of Moncton, full with workers going to Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Fort McMurray. There's not one of those flights going right now. So that puts it in a little perspective that this affects everywhere. Mr. St. Marie and then Mr. Blakey.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je tiens d'abord à saluer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I'd like to welcome all of the witnesses and thank you for your presentations. We have, I think, heard the most poignant testimony from this particular group throughout the consultations. To save time, I will just ask one question of Mr. Leduc. I'd like to know what the position of your organization is concerning the deployment of 5G by Huawei. Do you have any comments on that subject? No, we don't have any position on Huawei. They're not a member of our association. And so we avoid that scenario. So if you don't have a position on that, you don't have a problem if it is Huawei that sets up 5G in this country? No, that's not at all what I said. The idea of investigating Huawei's tools is up to the government security apparatus, and they need to make that assessment. It's up to the government to make the decision, but we have no position one way or another concerning Huawei's technology. Okay, thank you very much.
Gabriel? Mr. Blakey.
Thank you very much, and yeah, I just want to say a thank you to all of our witnesses, including Ms. Daenzer and Mr. Ferrant for sharing your experience, and point well taken that it's an important role and the support ought to be there for people both on the front end in terms of training and preparation for what they might see and the job that they have to do, but follow up as well for the impact that that can have. So thank you for sharing your personal experience on that point. Thank you as well to Ms. Sullivan for sharing your experience and the story of your son. I think that's important, and point well taken on the disability tax credit. It's something that I know many members from many parties, but I know the NDP as well has raised this in the House and done a lot of work on the disability tax credit, and we do need to get that one figured out. And ultimately, of course, we would like to have a national pharmacare plan that will help people with the upfront costs, not just getting a little bit back on their taxes at the end of the fiscal year, but to make sure that people have a way to access it in the first place. I wanted to just turn to Helen Kennedy from afar, and I'm not familiar with all the details of the action plan, but I wonder, when we talk about the blood ban, for instance, and some of the things that you mentioned in your presentation, it seems to me would have little or no financial impact on the government. And I'm wondering, you know, if you maybe just want to highlight a few of those things that we could do that would make a meaningful difference. And I appreciate that there are other things that ought to be done and that there should be funding in place for those things as well. But if you just want to take a moment to highlight some of the progress that we could make on behalf of the community that you represent without having a significant financial impact, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel, for that question and the opportunity to elaborate. There are significant areas where the government, at little to no cost, can make some changes immediately. And that would be one around changing the criminal code for intersex surgeries. Currently, it's legal for doctors to perform surgeries on intersex children, which is against international law. So that would be one that immediately the government could have a look at changing. Also, the issue of being more inclusive of policy review and changes to look at seniors and seniors in long-term care facilities in particular. Our seniors are afraid to go into long-term care homes for further victimization, and some of these areas can be reviewed immediately by the federal government to change policies and to require through potential health transfer payments that these long-term care facilities that are government run in particular can change their policies and be more effective and inclusive of LGBTQI2S seniors. There are a myriad of issues. I think also around education and training. You know, it's really interesting that some of the training policies that are included by the government won't necessarily impact LGBTQI2S people when over 64% of the student population who identify as members of that community don't feel safe in school and are hesitant to even finish their education, and they drop out. So there are a whole series of areas that could immediately be changed. Language in documentation to be more inclusive, changing policies around who gets to do research, how the data is analyzed, the language that's used in research calls, for example, simple. But, well, what I would think simple things through consultation with community organizations like EGAL, I think there are immediate areas where the government can address some of these inequities.
I had to cut you off, Mr. Cooper, and then over to Mr. Fraser.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to direct my questions to Ms. Dancer and Mr. Ferrand. Certainly powerful testimony today. Certainly heard you, and we, all committee members of the Justice Committee, heard you when you appeared in the last Parliament to tell your story about how jury service has forever changed your lives. And it was very impactful and resulted in a very, I think, important report, 11 recommendations, unanimous all-party support around them. I was wondering if you could perhaps elaborate on the void that presently exists and how the Jurors Association Commission would fill that void. And when we talk about $20 million over 10 years, we're talking about a pittance. That's really a rounding error. So perhaps you could elaborate on how that funding would result in connecting former jurors with mental health supports. And finally, I know you've done a lot of great work. Maybe you could also elaborate on all of those that have been involved in developing the commission.
Thank you for the question. Jury duty is the most important civic duty left in Canadian society, and it is the last mandatory civic duty left in Canadian society. When you receive a summons, you are bound by law to respond to it. We want Canadians to welcome the opportunity to serve their communities in court, to deliver justice, and not want to shirk the responsibility or find ways to avoid it. And we believe that having a national organization that represents the interests of those on jury duty can support jurors and promote jury duty to Canadians is missing from our country as it is now. Police associations and first responders and our veterans associations, which we have connected to through our work to raise the profile of mental health and PTSD, those are wonderful organizations that work on behalf of their members to support them, to give them access to evidence-based treatment and the like that jurors do not have access to. And that's a shame because jury duty is not a vocation. It's not something that has training. It's not something that has personal and professional development or peer support. Yet they're the most vulnerable to trauma based on the evidence that they see in court, the burden of jury duty, and the decisions that they're bound to reach as a part of a verdict. We're already working with fantastic organizations like the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, Peer Support Canada, the Canadian Mental Health Association, and we met yesterday with the National Judicial Institute, and we'll be partnering with them on programs to justices. They're approaching it from the judge and the justice side. We're bringing the voice of the juror to the table to provide those solutions and the like, to train judges on their roles and responsibility in courtrooms. Many judges actually have power to execute very cogent security programs for jurors in the courthouse. They just don't do it because they don't realize that it's necessary. When a juror is sitting in a case involving gang-related activity and are being stalked outside of the courtroom, going through the security into the in and out of the courthouse, passing witnesses who follow them to their car. This isn't fiction. This is actually happening. So
It's not just mental health support that jurors require. There's a lot of evidence. We've spoken to many jurors in regards to support in the workplace. Their employees are not supported. Their bosses go, "Oh my God, well, who's going to do your job? As many of you may know or may not know, the law requires an employer to hold your job. It doesn't necessarily require the employer to pay the employee. So you have employees that aren't getting paid, or they're being asked to take a short-term leave, which only gives them a portion of their salary. Jurors don't get paid in many jurisdictions. It varies right across the country. In Ontario, I believe it's 30 days before you get a nickel. My husband was just summoned to court. The sheet says, please show up on this date at this time, and don't forget you're responsible to pay your parking. That'll be $24 a day for senior citizens who are on fixed incomes. We shouldn't be requiring that from our citizens. If you're asking them to appear, that is your responsibility. You're laughing. This is not funny. You know, everyone in that courtroom, from the judge to the Crown, to the prosecutor, to the court clerk, to the prisoner who gets 3 square meals a day in a cot, gets paid. The jury is asked to pay themselves in order to get themselves there and be able to come to jury duty every day.
And then you fulfill your civic duty, and you don't have access to support.
Okay, we will have to end it there. I just wanted to, based on what Mr. Cooper said, it's the $20 million is over 10 years?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't pick that up the first time. Thanks for that clarification. It's $2 million a year. Mr. Fraser, and then back over to the official opposition.
Thank you, though I don't necessarily have questions for the Canadian Juries Commission. I wanted to say any laughter you heard, I think, was disbelief, not humor. That's remarkable. The notion that we're going to put people in harm's way in the nature of, in the name of the public interest without giving them tools to be well on the back end is unconscionable to me, and I want to say thank you for your advocacy. I'll begin with Yigal. You mentioned one of the recommendations that you'd be hoping to see would be a $12 million contribution to community organizations. I tried to do a little bit of quick math. If it was a population-based share, my home province of Nova Scotia would probably see about $350,000. One of the concerns that I have, well, there's two. I think one is figuring out why $12 million is the correct amount. And second, I realize that in a lot of smaller communities, like some of those I represent, the organizations are made up of good-natured volunteers who see a need that's going unmet but have virtually no capacity to fill out sometimes complicated calls for proposals. They're lucky sometimes if they can find the volunteer hours to submit an application for the Canada Summer Jobs Program. Are there safeguards we can put in place to make sure that there's enough funding and a simplified application process for these community organizations so that regardless of their volunteer capacity or the lack of paid positions, that they're actually able to access funding that might be attributed to such an important cause? Sorry, we're having a technical problem. We can't hear.
So IGAL is IGAL is a national organization, and we do work in communities right across the country. We have partnerships with organizations in different jurisdictions, and we deliver our programming in these jurisdictions around the country. So the 12 million is a rough estimate. I'd be happy to ask for more if you don't think it's enough. And certainly the 12 million is a start for Minister Chagger to fulfill her mandate as directed by the PMO. And a lot of the funds can indeed be allocated to organizations like IGAL and some of the smaller organizations in the rural communities who are doing basically the government's work. We believe that this money should be going to things like research, further research to identify what the gaps are, so we can look at policy review and policy change and service delivery to the LGBTQI2S populations in everybody's riding, in every jurisdiction across the country.
Thank you so much. I've got very limited time, and I want to get a couple other questions, if you don't mind. I wanted to pivot to Intact. You mentioned some of the challenges tied to climate change for the insurance sector, particularly flooding, flood mapping, the need to assist with the cost of relocation and devaluation of property. One comment you made jumped out at me: the importance of better using grasslands and wetlands to mitigate the impact of climate change for your industry and more broadly for society. I'm curious when you said that, if you meant sort of protection, restoration, or how can we best use grasslands and wetlands to reduce the cost to plan members and taxpayers of climate change?
Well, it's by with the Intact Climate Change Center, we've proven that could probably reduce the flood damage by upward of 40% when there's a big event. The water needs to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And if there's enough wetland and grassland around the area where people live, that could mitigate the damage. So a very good way to protect the population against those flood damage.
Okay, and finally, do I have a short question left, Mr. Chair? Thank you. To JDRF, thank you for your work. It's absolutely remarkable. Two very quick questions. I understand there's a real problem sometimes when someone can lose access to the disability tax credit, perhaps if they age out, for example. They don't just lose access to the disability tax credit, but also contributions that have been made to a registered disability savings plan. The fix that you sort of suggested on the disability tax credit around life-sustaining therapy automatically qualifying, would that take care of both issues? And part two to the question, the Diabetes 360, which we heard previously about, you mentioned would save billions of dollars in downstream costs to the healthcare system. Is there a breakdown of how those savings could accrue that you could submit to the committee? I don't think we have time in this question to get to it now, but
that's what you call sneaking one in.
Right. So I'll work with our colleagues at Diabetes Canada on the Diabetes 360, right? Because they've been sort of the leads on that, and we've been working collaboratively with them. And yes, the fix on the DTC, in my mind, would solve the RDSP problem. And in fact, in the previous budget, the RDSP clawback was removed. So that now needs to be enacted, though.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
More folks on stream, and if committee members have to leave, I think we can operate in the assurance there will be no motions put in the next 10 minutes. So, Mr. Morantz and then Mr. Fragiskatis to wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Prouton, we had evidence the other day from the Disability Tax Fairness Alliance that the disability tax credit is used by less than 40% of Canadians who are eligible for it. Now, it's well known in the last Parliament that because of rules that were changed within CRA, and this was I wasn't here then, but it was a major battle, and your organization was right there fighting for clarification on that successful applications for people with type 1 diabetes because of the change in policy were substantially reduced. I understand your organization has expressed concerns, and it almost seems like the government is tripping over itself to make it more difficult for people to qualify for the tax credit. So that one got clarified, but the next one is, I understand your organization expressed concern with respect to the publication in the Canada Gazette last June with respect to restriction of compensation for professionals who are providing services for people with disabilities who are trying to attain the credit, which would make it even more difficult for the 40% of the people who are already qualifying. I see that as kind of the next tsunami that your organization will probably be up to bat on. But I'm wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, actually, if they enacted the people who required insulin, which is a life-sustaining therapy, qualified for the disability tax credit, there should be no question, right? The nurse practitioners or the doctors for type 1 diabetics, it should actually be a very simple process, is how I would view it. If they don't go to that point, I would say what's happening is it's a back and forth then with your doctor, right? And so you get rejected, you have to go back to your doctor. There's no compensation for the completion of the forms. So you're right, that creates a problem. But the simple solution is actually just to let people with type 1 diabetes qualify for the for the disability tax credit. Problem solved in my mind.
Yeah, like you did, like in a correspondence to CRA last June, express specific concern about the compensation to professionals in this area. I think you said the effect of limiting compensation for disability professionals as proposed in the June 1st edition would make it impossible for many of the businesses to operate and leave thousands of Canadians with disabilities to navigate a process on their own, which many find confusing and difficult. I wonder if you could elaborate on that thought.
Yeah, so I guess what's interesting is that you can file your own taxes, right? You don't have to validate your taxes, but in this case, you have to get somebody to validate you've got type 1 diabetes to complete your application. So, you know, in many ways, you could simplify the application process, and because there's no compensation for your GP or endocrinologist or your nurse practitioner, it does create a hurdle. So I guess if we would allow for self-application, that would actually be another part of the solution.
Yeah. And just a quick one, this statistic of a 40% of Canadians not qualifying or who are eligible or not applying, is that similar when it comes to type 1 diabetes, or is the percentage higher?
You know what, that's a good question. It's actually, I'm not 100% sure, because I think it would vary by different condition. And I'm sorry, I just don't know how it breaks down within the CRA application.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Last block, Mr. Fragiskatis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all witnesses, of course. In such limited time, I'm going to direct my questions to the JDRF. Mr. Proughton, Ms. Sullivan, you've put it very well today, the importance of your cause and what you're advocating for, what you're fighting for. We see and this came up earlier today, the minister that's primarily responsible for research in his mandate letter calls for research to be the key in creating the circumstances where we build a healthy society. How critical has research been towards finding ways forward on type 1? And Mr. Proughton, you came up to me early on today and told me about something that's in clinical trials right now that we'd love to hear about, I think.
Okay, well, thank you for that opportunity. So I would say Canada has hit above its weight significantly in diabetes, right? We've discovered insulin, stem cells. We've developed what's called the Edmonton Protocol, which was a group of researchers have transplanted islet cells and given people a new source of insulin. But now stem cells are on the horizon, and so this is a device that gets implanted below the skin. It gets filled with stem cells and would be, say, inserted below your arm or your belly. The goal of that is that the cells inside would turn into insulin-producing cells and giving people a new source of insulin. Because type 1 diabetes, you're checking your blood sugar 6-10 times a day. If you're on a glucose monitor, it's constant. This is, think of this as freedom from diabetes, because you now could have a new source of insulin. And so we've moved from the lab to human clinical trials, which is a massive step. So there are Canadians that have this device in them right now. And that's why we're asking for more research funding in partnership with CIHR, because we're a partner with CIHR. We think we collectively can do great things. But the opportunity for innovation and to maintain Canada's global, I'd say, leadership position, and for the last 99 years in diabetes, is right here. We've got so many great researchers in Canada that JDRF is funding, that CIHR is funding. Collectively, the innovation opportunity is right here. So let's do something on the 100th anniversary of one of the world's greatest medical discoveries.
Well, I'll also take the opportunity, Mr. Chair, to put on the record that Frederick Banting was from London. So
there you go.
I support you for that as well. In my last question, Ms. Sullivan, how critical, I know the answer is obvious, but I think it's important for you as a mother of one who's impacted by type 1 diabetes, how critical is research and government support for research for people in your position, for your family?
Thank you for the question. Personally speaking, I can only say it in one way. My son's life depends on it. And there's so many Canadians fighting this. And when you throw in other environmental and social complications that make it more difficult for these individuals to survive, the risks are so significant for them. Support and the funding through the DTC and all the other things that JDRF and the research would alleviate and allow them to then muddle their way through the other stresses in life.
Last quick point, Mr. Chair. CIHR then has been instrumental, I think it's fair to say, Mr. Proughton, for JDRF.
We have a very strong partnership with CIHR. We are co-funding research right now, a lot of research with them, and we see more opportunities to do more together. So I view them as a tremendous partner.
Okay, with that, we are at the hour to adjourn. I want to thank all the witnesses, both in those in video conference and those here, for your presentations, and I do think we had an excellent discussion. With that, we will adjourn, and we will see everybody at 3:30 and do it all over again. So, meeting adjourned.